Sergeant James Wright joined the US Marines to fulfill a boyhood dream. And even when he was sent to Iraq and suffered horrific injuries, both his hands were blown off in Fallujah, he took it more or less in his stride. He's now back in civilian life, possibly even more of a challenge, and he's working to help other veterans to start their own businesses. But he's also involved in a project organised by a group called Freedom Is Not Free that will gladden the hearts of all red-blooded females. A calendar featuring Iraq veterans showing off their biceps in various extremely attractive poses. More on that in a moment. But I first asked him about his reasons for joining the Marines.
Well, as far back as I can remember, I wanted to be a Marine ever since I was a small child. It was just an organization that impressed me. And, it took a while, and finally I got off my butt and I got around to doing it.
But what you probably hadn't thought about when you were a little boy and dreaming about that was being sent to somewhere like Iraq. How did you find that?
Well, at the time, my first time going over to Iraq was quite a busy time. Most of my time was spent training and preparing. So I didn't really spend too much time worrying about the possibilities of what might happen. I tried to concentrate on the things that I could control.
Well, you were injured, of course. Tell me what happened.
April 7, 2004, we were on a movement from one part of Fallujah to another. And during that movement, we were ambushed by probably 40 to 60 insurgents. During the course of that ambush, I was struck with a rocket-propelled grenade. A rocket-propelled grenade actually struck the weapon that I was firing, immediately taking off both of my hands and severely injuring my leg. I had an open fracture of my femur, and of course I was bleeding quite profusely.
So horrible injuries. What went through your mind then?
I took a look at my hands, realized they were gone, and took a look at my leg, realized that was injured, and I needed immediate medical attention, tourniquets and whatnot. We were still receiving quite an amount of fire from the enemy, so really I didn't have too much time to dwell on my injuries. I really tried to concentrate on the things that I could do to better our situation.
But you had these injuries and you knew you'd lost your hands and part of your leg. Were you also in pain at that time?
I was in pain, but the adrenaline and the excitement of the moment kept that under control, and really it was kind of a secondary worry for me.
You and your colleagues got back and you were treated at the field hospital. At what point, though, did it really sink in that your life was going to have to change?
That didn't happen until I was back in the States, and I was in the intensive care unit, and I had most of my surgeries already completed, and I was able to have enough time on my hands, so to speak, to really sit back and think about what had happened and how my life was going to change.
And what were your thoughts then?
Well, really, my thoughts were I wanted to get back into shape, get out of the bed, get out of the hospital, and return back to work, if possible.
And you did, of course, which is interesting, because the Marines could easily have invalided you out at that point, couldn't they?
Yes, they could have. Luckily, the people in command had the foresight to see that a wounded veteran sometimes is best kept for our experience. I was able to instruct Marines, teach Marines, and inspire Marines, and who may not have been in combat before, and it was a great experience.
How did you cope in those early days when you were back at work, not in Iraq at that point, of course? How did you cope with the effects of your injuries?
Well, I really tried to stay busy. I feel that the things that I can't control, it doesn't do me any good to worry about, and what I could do, those are the things that I concentrated on. And I just found it inspiring for me. I got inspiration from fellow Marines who were willing to support me and work with me.
Were you fitted with prosthetic hands quite early on?
I was. I think it was about 3 months after my injury when I finally got to have my first prosthetic hand. I can pretty much do everything that I did before. It just may take me a little bit longer.
What about your leg injury? Is that healed up?
It is. I do have some problems with my leg, but I don't have any pain, and I'm walking fine. As time goes by, I get stronger and stronger.
Of course, all of this means that you would sooner or later have to return to civilian life. I'd imagine that would be very difficult after what you've been through.
It was. I think that the most difficult part was leaving a camaraderie, a brotherhood that you can't quite compare to anything that you might experience in the civilian world. And knowing that I was leaving and wondering what my next step was going to be, if I was going to have a job that I felt would be fulfilling.
Well, you'd have different kinds of challenges in civilian life than you had in Iraq. There's not the adrenaline or the excitement. Do you get bored?
I do get bored, but I try to stay busy, and things like the organization that I'm involved with now, freedomsnotfree.com, they help to alleviate the boredom.
Well, one of the things you've done with that organisation is to take part in this calendar project. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's the 2007 America's Heroes calendar. It's kind of a beefcake calendar put together by some fellow Marines, willing to take their shirts off for a good cause and raise some money for us wounded veterans.
But you didn't take your shirt off, did you?
No, but maybe in 2008 I'll get that chance.
Did you unbutton it a bit?
I actually have a picture in there of me in uniform, so that probably wouldn't have been appropriate, but I can promise when 2008 comes out, I'll be there with my shirt off.
Okay, well, we'll certainly look forward to that. What about the other men who took part in the calendar? They've taken their shirts off?
They have, and these are not only Marines, they're from my unit. I served with them. They're the elite of the Marine Corps, Marine Reconnaissance, and so these guys are in really good shape, and I think that we have had no trouble finding young ladies who would be put in awe by the sight of them.
Well, I can imagine that. How many have you sold?
We've sold 25,000 of them. We actually had to reprint, and just the amount of outpouring support has just been amazing.
And how much do you hope to raise in the end?
We want to raise $1 to $2 million, not only from the sales, but from the independent donations. We just recently received 2 checks for $25,000 each, which was amazing, that the support that we're getting. What's
the money going to be used for?
We have helped Marines and soldiers with immediate financial needs, such as helping family, wives, spouses, parents with financial expenses incurred because of their injuries. We've purchased burn beds. Our lofty goals are eventually to create more services at San Diego's Balboa Veterans Hospital, such as traumatic brain injury rehabilitation centers that are more comprehensive, and to create a lasting impression.
The idea of this calendar is an absolutely brilliant one, and I'm sure it's being applauded by right-thinking women everywhere. But why is it necessary?
The pressing need for something to alleviate the stresses, maybe mentally and financially, that are incurred through these terrible injuries and these changes in lifestyle for a lot of young wounded veterans is a driving force behind this calendar. We do have facilities and programs within the government, but sometimes those take a while to take advantage of and actually benefit directly from. This cuts out the middleman, so to speak.
But these are guys who've given their health for their country. Shouldn't the government be paying for all of this? I mean, shouldn't the government be paying enough so that you don't feel that this is necessary?
There's no way that I could say no to that question. Of course, the government should be taking care of their wounded veterans who put their lives on the line for their country. But I think that the problem is it's a big organization, it's a big bureaucracy, and sometimes things take a while to change, which luckily, veterans from previous wars are making sure that these changes take effect, especially to name the Vietnam-era veterans who came back and were not received well by the government and the community.
What you're doing, of course, also gets a lot of publicity as well as raising money. Are you hopeful that that will change attitudes in the amount of money being made available? Is that one of the aims?
It is. Any type of attention that we can bring to wounded veterans, I think, there's a problem when, people get so used to seeing a news broadcast and all they get is maybe a number of wounded veterans that may have been injured in that day or that month. You are a little bit numb to it. It just becomes routine, and so you kind of lose touch. And something like this, I hope, will bring back to light and put into attention and focus the needs that a lot of young American veterans and wounded veterans have, and perhaps even overseas help British veterans who are also coming back from Iraq wounded.
Sergeant James Wright, and you can see the calendar at freedomisnotfree.com. I do recommend it.